Welcome back to the deep dive. I'm so thrilled you're with us, especially today.
Oh, this is a big one.
It really is, because we are tackling something that, well, it fundamentally dictates the success or the frustration of every single one of your days.
Habits.
Habits. We're going beneath the surface of all those things we do without thinking. You know, the sheer mental autopilot that governs our mornings, our work, our evenings.
Right.
If you've ever just wondered why that one bad habit won't quit, or
Right.
why starting a good one feels like you're trying to climb a mountain,
Then this is for you.
this deep dive is absolutely your guide.
That's right. Today's mission really is to take a deep look at the specific psychological framework behind all these repetitive actions.
We're going beyond just listing routines.
Way beyond. We aren't just summarizing, we're dissecting the cognitive mechanism. We've pulled together some amazing source material that details daily routines from the second you wake up.
To the moment you wind down.
Exactly. And the goal is to fully understand the driving principle of our brain's entire operation.
Which is
Cognitive efficiency.
absolutely. And the source material is just fantastic because it grounds this whole conversation in a very specific, very relatable setting. It describes this otherwise bright, almost idyllic day, but it all starts with a very conscious choice.
Opting for a walk through the park instead of just jumping in the car.
Right. And that subtle pivot, that decision to move the body and clear the head, it just immediately brings the importance of intentional routine into sharp focus.
That choice of the walk is so critical. It really is. Because it represents the moment that conscious thought interrupts the automatic flow.
It's like a pattern interrupt.
It is. The walk, as it's described in the source, it becomes a kind of meditative state, a crucial transition point where the brain is actively choosing how to spend its energy.
And that contrasts with the rest of the day.
The vast majority of our day, which just operates completely without any scrutiny.
So we're starting with this rare conscious choice to understand all the constant involuntary ones.
That's the idea.
Okay, so let's get a baseline. What is the fundamental analytical definition of what we're actually calling a habit?
Well, fundamentally, a habit is a behavioral pattern repeated so frequently that it becomes nearly or, completely involuntary.
So it's something you just do.
You just do it. It's really the highest form of optimization the brain performs. We often think of habits as good or bad, but psychologically, they're just tools.
Tools for what?
For conserving mental effort.
Okay, let's unpack this concept you mentioned. Cognitive efficiency. Why is automation so important to the brain that it will turn almost anything we do repeatedly into a pre-programmed script?
It all boils down to a sheer scarcity of resources.
Like brain fuel.
Literally.
Yeah.
Our brains want to conserve metabolic energy. Conscious thought, deep analytical evaluation, consumes an enormous amount of glucose.
So thinking is expensive.
Very expensive. If you had to consciously evaluate the cost versus the benefit of tying your shoe or brushing your teeth, or even deciding which route to drive every single day, you would literally exhaust your decision-making capacity before you even got to lunch.
So you're saying the brain automates these routine tasks, basically functioning like muscle memory for the mind, just to save that fuel.
Precisely. Automation frees up that crucial mental bandwidth and all those glucose resources for complex problem solving later in the day.
That makes sense.
Think of it this way. If a new car model came out that required you to consciously manage the timing of every fuel injection and every ignition spark,
You wouldn't buy it.
of course not. Our brain is designed to manage all those routine mechanical operations behind the scenes, so our frontal cortex can focus on the novel challenges.
Yeah.
That is cognitive efficiency in action.
That makes perfect sense. And the source gives us an immediate, concrete, and actually a highly virtuous example of this automation.
A hydration habit.
Yes. The simple instinct of reaching for water as soon as you wake up.
And that action is performed without any internal debate. There's no back and forth.
Right.
When you say an action is automatic, we mean there is zero internal cost-benefit analysis. The brain has already assessed the need hydration and linked it directly to the cue, which is waking up.
It's a virtuous habit that's become so, what's the word you used?
Ingrained. So deeply established and difficult to change, it requires zero conscious input, perfectly illustrating maximum cognitive efficiency applied to a really positive outcome.
But here's where it gets really interesting, I think. Because we often automate the good things. But we also automate the highly detrimental things. The sources pivot immediately from that virtuous habit to the inevitable modern morning ritual trade-off.
Reaching for the smartphone.
Reaching for the smartphone. It is the defining Achilles heel of the modern morning routine, isn't it?
It really is. The source asks this question. What is your very first action upon consciousness? And the answer for almost everyone is reaching for that device.
And that instantly introduces the detrimental habit of
Doom scrolling, checking emails, absorbing global news, scrolling through social media.
all before your feet even hit the floor.
Exactly. You're essentially subjecting your resting brain to an immediate information overload.
And the source provides a fascinating detail here, connecting this detrimental behavior not just to mental stress, but to a physical consequence.
The optometrist warning.
Right, against blue light exposure so early in the day. It's a very real physical consequence of a psychological compulsion.
It is. It's that instantaneous dopamine hit that is so difficult to resist because the brain is seeking immediate low-effort stimulation just to wake itself up.
And the path of least resistance is the phone.
It's always the phone. This is the exact moment where the principle of cognitive efficiency backfires on us. The brain finds the easiest path, not necessarily the most productive or healthiest path.
And that leads to higher stress. It preemptively drains those mental resources we were just talking about.
It does. And this contrast, the guilt of instant doom scrolling versus the small victory of a virtuous habit, that perfectly sets up our core analysis of the morning.
Okay, let's turn to those core morning patterns then, starting with that crucial virtuous counterpoint, the small victory. The source describes one person being, and I love this word, fastidious about making the bed first thing in the morning.
And that detail is incredibly telling. It really is, because it is a prime example of what behavioral scientists call a keystone habit.
A keystone habit.
Yeah, making the bed is this small, manageable physical discipline that creates an immediate, visible sense of accomplishment and order.
But why does that matter so much? I mean, it's just going to be unmade again in 12 hours.
It matters because of psychological anchoring. You are exerting immediate, complete control over your immediate environment.
Ah.
Admiral William McRaven, among others, has famously promoted this exact idea. If you make your bed, you've accomplished the first task of the day.
So even if the rest of the day just descends into chaos,
you have one point of order. This small victory provides a psychological anchor, and it jumpstarts positive momentum. It sets a precedent for discipline and organization for all the tasks to come.
It's the fundamental act of saying, I am in charge of this day, not the other way around.
That's it.
But that momentum can crash immediately into the problem of decision fatigue, especially when we consider sustenance, breakfast.
Ah, yes. The classic monotonous breakfast detailed in the source.
Toast, butter, and tea.
Right. To an outsider, this might seem boring, maybe lacking imagination, but psychologically, it is highly, highly functional. This strict routine is a deliberate, proactive strategy to avoid exhausting the day's limited supply of mental fuel.
We mentioned decision fatigue earlier, but let's really give it the deep dive it deserves. Explain the mechanism and why sticking to the same boring breakfast is actually a sign of strategic genius.
Okay, so decision fatigue suggests that the quality of our decisions deteriorates the more choices we have to make throughout the day.
The more decisions you make, the worse you get at it.
Essentially, yes. Researchers have done fascinating studies on this, observing things like judges being far more likely to grant parole early in the morning or right after a break than later in the day.
Really? Why?
Because the continuous process of evaluating cases just drains their finite cognitive resources.
So every small decision, even seemingly trivial ones like, choosing a shirt or a breakfast cereal, contributes to that drain.
Exactly. Every single choice requires weighing options and expending mental energy. Think of high-profile, high-demand individuals, Steve Jobs or Mark Zuckerberg, who famously adopted a monotonous wardrobe.
The black turtleneck.
The black turtleneck, the gray t-shirt. They are consciously eliminating variables to conserve that cognitive effort for tasks that genuinely require deep concentration and high-stakes evaluation later in the day.
So by sticking to toast, butter, and tea, you are intelligently allocating your finite cognitive resources.
You're saving your best mental efforts for when they truly matter.
Okay, so boring breakfasts are strategic. But once those variables are eliminated and focus is conserved, one non-negotiable prerequisite often remains. And this one seems to blur the line between fuel and dependency.
Caffeine.
Caffeine, absolutely. The source mentions consuming about 3 cups daily and refers to it as an excessive amount and a primary vice.
And this raises that crucial analytical question that often divides people. Where is the line between a preference and a functional dependency?
Right. And if that line is crossed, if it's truly a non-negotiable prerequisite for basic functioning, is it still serving us?
That's the question.
I mean, functionally, if I know 3 cups makes me hit my peak performance zone and maintain that energy, is it truly a vice? Or is it a highly optimized, chemically assisted performance strategy?
And that is the essential friction we need to explore. Chemically, it's a dependency. There's no way around that. The body has adapted, and it requires it simply to function at baseline, to avoid withdrawal symptoms like headaches.
But behaviorally?
Yeah, behaviorally, it is a highly functional habit. The phrasing in the source, non-negotiable prerequisite, tells you everything. The habit has crossed the threshold. It's no longer just a helpful stimulant.
It's the foundation.
It's the necessary chemical foundation upon which the entire day is built. We have to acknowledge that the habit is a complex, dual-natured vice. It enables peak professional performance while, at the same time, confirming a physical reliance.
So the analysis isn't about eliminating it.
Not necessarily. It's about recognizing the trade-off. You gain productivity, but you sacrifice true baseline independent energy.
Okay, so moving from fueling the body and mind into the professional sphere, the source highlights the need for organizational habits, specifically the meticulous curation of to-do lists and the importance of prioritization. This seems like the professional equivalent of that fastidious bed-making we talked about. It's about creating order.
It is absolutely related to the need for control and structure. A meticulously maintained to-do list prevents tasks from just bouncing around chaotically inside your working memory.
Which is exhausting.
It's very exhausting.
Yeah.
Psychologically, getting those tasks out of your head and onto paper or a screen reduces your mental burden. It's known as the Zeigarnik effect.
The Zeigarnik effect.
The tendency our brains have to remember uncompleted tasks better than completed ones. That's why that thing you forgot to do nags at you.
So the list itself conserves energy.
Yes. But just simple listing isn't enough. Prioritization is the key psychological step.
Why?
Because prioritization forces you to assign value and urgency. It means you are not randomly attacking low-impact tasks just because they're easy.
It protects you from that temptation of, what do they call it, productive procrastination.
Exactly, where you busy yourself with small, unimportant tasks just to avoid that one huge, difficult one that's actually important. Prioritization ensures the cognitive energy we've been talking about is spent only on the most high-leverage activities.
That discipline, though, the list-making, the prioritization, it contrasts so sharply with a specific professional flaw also detailed in the source. The issue of punctuality, which is explained through this concept of temporal optimism, this term is so insightful because it names that unseen enemy of time management.
Temporal optimism is a profound insight into why we fail at time management. It is the habit of consistently underestimating how long tasks will actually take.
So it's not just being late.
No, it's a deep subconscious belief that you are uniquely capable of accomplishing more in less time than objective reality suggests. It isn't malicious lateness. It's a systematic cognitive bias where your aspiration overrides your history.
So the reason you're perpetually 5 minutes late isn't that the traffic was bad.
No.
It's that your brain convinced you that the 20-minute drive would take 15 minutes, despite all the evidence from the last 100 times you made that drive.
Precisely. It's rooted in a kind of self-deception. We believe, irrationally, that this time will be more efficient, this time we'll find the parking spot immediately, or this time that email will take only 60 seconds to draft.
And it leads to scrambling, rushing, elevated stress.
And inevitably, missed deadlines or lateness. It erodes the very professional credibility that your meticulous organization is supposed to be building. It's a paradox.
The proposed logical solution in the source being a buffer, just aiming to arrive 5 minutes early, it seems deceptively simple.
It does.
Yet the source notes the difficulty lies in putting this into practice. So why is the rational solution so hard to implement behaviorally?
Because temporal optimism is an ingrained pattern. It's rooted in our identity. You believe you're an efficient person, and building in a buffer feels like conceding that you are not.
So you're fighting the very narrative you tell yourself.
You are. Overriding this requires conscious, disciplined effort to force that buffer time into the schedule. And it means challenging that core optimistic impulse with cold, hard data, with how long the task actually took the last 10 times you did it.
So the habit you need to break isn't just rushing. The habit is the belief that you can perpetually beat the clock. You have to replace your aspirational thinking with empirical scheduling.
That is the deep change. If you just managed to leave 5 minutes earlier, you haven't broken the habit of optimism, you've just adjusted the logistics for one day. To truly break temporal optimism, you must internalize that the 5-minute buffer is non-negotiable mental overhead, essential for mitigating stress and preserving that precious cognitive efficiency.
Okay, let's shift our attention toward the evening, focusing on that crucial transition period. After a day of focused effort and fighting our own cognitive biases, decompression is vital.
Absolutely.
The source details a very strict, very disciplined transition. Sitting in silence for 10 minutes, a mental reset, followed by heading to the gym.
This is an exemplary transition habit. I mean, those 10 minutes of silence are not passive time. They are active boundary setting.
What do you mean by boundary setting?
They consciously separate the professional mental state from the personal mental state. It prevents the cognitive residue of the workday, the planning, the anxieties, the unresolved issues from bleeding into your evening.
It's a mechanism to stop the brain's momentum.
Exactly. It's a signaling ritual.
Okay.
And then immediately pairing that reset with a gym introduces stress relief and commendable discipline.
Right.
Physical exercise is one of the most effective ways to literally process and metabolize the stress hormones, like cortisol, that have built up during the day. It's an intentional, positive automation.
That commendable discipline, however, is contrasted so sharply in the sources with the other speaker's confession of a sedentary trap.
Yes.
An exercise regimen that is, and this is the quote, sporadic at best.
And that juxtaposition, it just highlights the reality that self-discipline is rarely applied uniformly across our lives.
You can be great in one area and terrible in another.
Absolutely. You can be fastidious about professional organization and yet completely sporadic, occasionally or at irregular intervals when it comes to physical movement.
And that sedentary trap.
It's a lifestyle with little physical activity. It's comfortable, it's the path of least resistance, and it is the result of allowing that cognitive efficiency to prioritize short-term physical rest over long-term health.
It seems like that lack of consistency and that path of least resistance also surfaces powerfully in the evening culinary choices.
Oh, definitely.
We go from physical discipline to dietary chaos. The source admits to a profound culinary vice.
Relying too heavily on food delivery services.
Yes.
This habit is driven entirely by peak decision fatigue. By the time the workday is truly over, all that cognitive energy we carefully conserved with the monotonous breakfast,
It's gone.
it has been spent. The brain defaults to seeking instant gratification with the lowest possible physical effort. This food delivery vice is a dual drain. It operates on two levels that oppose our long-term goals.
Financial and physical, the convenience always comes at a premium, and the reliance on processed or restaurant food raises concerns about long-term, arterial health.
Exactly. And we have to analyze this through the lens of the instant gratification loop versus the delayed reward system.
Explain that.
Ordering food is immediate. The reward, the taste, the full belly is instant, and the effort is zero. Meal prepping, which is the suggested beneficial counter habit, requires front-loaded effort,
Shopping, planning, cooking.
all of it, and is for a reward better health, saving money, that is delayed. The bad habit wins because it is optimized for that moment of complete exhaustion.
So meal prepping is the antidote. It requires leveraging those initial organizational habits, that to-do list mentality, to structure your food choices when you have maximum mental energy.
Precisely. Meal prepping is an act of future self-care. You are making a decision on Sunday evening when you are rested and rational to protect your tired, depleted Thursday evening self from making a poor decision.
And by having healthy, ready-made food available.
You make the healthy option the path of least resistance. You're effectively forcing the brain to automate a virtuous outcome instead of the convenient vice.
Speaking of structure, we have one final powerful contrast in domestic routines. The source pits immediate action against procrastination.
Yes, the kitchen.
The kitchen. One speaker cannot abide a messy kitchen, washing dishes immediately because, as they say, a cluttered space equals a cluttered mind.
That viewpoint is deeply anchored in the psychological need for environmental control. The fastidious person views external clutter not just as physical mess, but as a source of cognitive drag.
A cognitive drag.
Yeah, every dirty plate you see is a visual reminder of an unfinished task. It's subtly draining your mental energy throughout the evening and into the next morning. Eliminating the mess immediately is a crucial form of mental hygiene for that person.
Versus the confession of a propensity to let dishes pile up until the following morning, which is labeled a terrible form of procrastination.
And this is a classic battle, isn't it? It's between immediate comfort and delayed consequences. Procrastination, in this context, is prioritizing the short-term goal of resting immediately after dinner over the long-term goal of waking up to a clean, stress-free kitchen.
But the consequence of the bad habit, that cognitive drag of starting the day with yesterday's mess, is often far greater than the effort saved by avoiding the chore the night before.
Absolutely. These two opposing habits perfectly illustrate how our routines define our relationship with discomfort and discipline day in and day out.
Okay, so we've established that our lives are pretty much defined by these automated tracks, both the good and the bad. We see how the brain optimizes for efficiency, often regardless of the quality of the outcome. But the central question remains, why is it so arduous to break a bad habit? Why does that deep rut feel so comfortable even when we consciously know it's detrimental to us?
The difficulty lies in the very physical structure of the brain itself. When we repeat a behavior, be it reaching for the phone or putting off the dishes, we are strengthening deep neural pathways.
And this isn't just a metaphor.
No, this is physical. The neural connection between the cue, like seeing the mess or feeling bored, and the response, procrastinating or scrolling, is literally reinforced every time.
How does that physical reinforcement manifest in energetic terms? How does it feel?
Well, it's similar to electrical wiring. As the signal travels down the same pathway repeatedly, that pathway gets insulated by a fatty sheath called myelin.
Myelin.
Right. Think of myelin like the rubber coating on a wire. Myelination makes the signal transfer faster, stronger, and critically more energetically efficient. When a habit is ingrained, the brain has optimized that myelinated pathway. It becomes an expressway for information.
So when we try to implement a new virtuous habit like washing the dishes immediately, we are essentially trying to forge a brand new road, a dirt path right next to a 6-lane high-speed expressway.
That is the perfect analogy. The old path is faster and requires almost no metabolic cost. The new path is unmyelinated, it's slower, it requires conscious effort, and it consumes vastly more glucose every single time you use it.
So you're fighting the very mechanism, that cognitive efficiency, that created the original habit in the first place.
Which is why breaking a bad habit is experienced as so arduous. It requires continuous, costly, conscious effort until that new pathway is also myelinated enough to become automatic.
Okay, so if conscious effort is a finite resource, and consistency is the key to myelination and forging that new path, how do we make that consistency less draining? The source offers a very clear, powerful strategy here.
Starting with microhabits.
Yeah.
This is the cornerstone of effective, sustainable behavioral change.
Yes.
It's often associated with the concept of atomic habits. The goal is, it's counterintuitive.
How so?
The goal is not to achieve the end result immediately. The goal is to establish your identity and build momentum through ridiculously small, consistent actions.
So the idea is to lower the barrier to entry so drastically that the friction required to start is almost non-existent.
Exactly.
If the barrier is high, like you vow to run a marathon, the neural pathway for procrastination is easily activated because the task just feels so daunting.
But the microhabit strategy completely removes that resistance by focusing solely on the starting line. We can look at this through the lens of the FOG behavior model, which states that behavior happens when motivation, ability, and a prompt converge.
B equals MAT.
Right. When trying to forge a new habit, your motivation might fluctuate wildly, but you can control the ability by making the task tiny.
Let's use the source's examples to illustrate this principle of maximum ability with minimum effort. First one, don't vow to run a marathon. Just commit to putting on your running shoes.
That is a phenomenal psychological trick. Putting on the shoes is the lowest possible effort point. It requires, what, 60 seconds?
If that.
Right. Once the shoes are on, you've changed your physical state and you've already achieved a mini win. The effort required to actually step outside and walk or jog is now significantly reduced compared to forcing yourself from a resting state to a full exercise routine.
You are leveraging that initial momentum.
Exactly.
And the second example is equally powerful. Don't promise to read a book a week. Just read 1 page a night.
1 page. That action is so easy, it's almost impossible to fail. You are prioritizing the act of showing up over the scale of the achievement.
You're just building the new neural pathway.
You are. Around the cue, which is getting into bed, and the small action, reading 1 page. By being consistent with the one page, you are strengthening that new road. And invariably, once you are sitting down, reading just one page feels silly.
And you'll read 2 or 5.
Or maybe an entire chapter. But your commitment was only ever for one page.
This sounds like a great lead-in to a more advanced application, habit stacking.
Mm-hmm.
If we're trying to forge a new habit, why try to start from scratch when we can just link it to an existing ingrained one?
Habit stacking is the genius evolution of microhabits. Since we already established that our day is full of these myelinated automatic routines, waking up, making coffee, brushing teeth, the strategy is to link the desired new habit to a highly stable existing habit.
Using a formula.
Right. The formula is, after current habit, I will new microhabit.
So instead of trying to randomly remember to meditate at some point during the day, I would link it to my ingrained caffeine habit.
How would that sound?
After I pour my first cup of coffee, I will sit in silence for 60 seconds.
That's perfect. You are using the established neural efficiency of pouring coffee, which is an involuntary action, as the prompt for the new behavior.
It takes the decision out of it.
It eliminates the need for conscious decision-making about when to perform the new task. This protects your motivation from depletion and ensures consistency, which is the sole driver of myelination. You're automating the prompt itself.
This entire deep dive, then, is really about equipping the listener, you, with the tools to identify and adjust these automatic tracks.
Yes.
And that requires synthesizing the advanced vocabulary we extracted from the source material. These aren't just words. They are precise psychological concepts that allow you to analyze your own life with sophistication.
Exactly. Understanding these terms moves you from simply labeling your behavior to understanding the underlying mechanism. It provides the necessary framework for effective intervention.
Let's start with ingrained. We use this to describe that strong compulsion to check the phone or the dependency on caffeine.
Ingrained means deeply established and difficult to change. When a habit is ingrained, it's not a temporary preference. It's physically wired into your neurological structure.
So it requires high effort.
High effort and conscious, repetitive action to modify because those pathways are so deep and efficient.
Then we have sedentary. This was used in contrast to the disciplined gym routine.
Sedentary describes a lifestyle with little physical activity. When we discussed the sporadic exercise regimen, we were describing falling into a sedentary trap. It refers to habits of inaction, which are often just as detrimental as poor habits of action.
Like the food delivery vice.
Exactly. It's the habit of choosing rest over movement by default.
And its positive counterpart in terms of attention to detail, fastidious.
Fastidious refers to being highly attentive to and concerned about accuracy and detail, like the meticulous bed making we discussed, or the curation of a prioritized to-do list. It implies a high degree of order and discipline in a specific area, and it often serves as a positive psychological anchor.
And the brilliant concept for time management failure, temporal optimism.
Temporal optimism is thinking you have more time than you actually do. This is such a crucial concept because it reframes punctuality issues or chronic rushing not as a moral failing,
but as a bug in the system.
as a systematic cognitive bias. An inherent deep error in self-assessment regarding time allocation that's rooted in aspiration, not reality.
Then we have the adverbs that define the frequency and reliability of our automatic tracks, invariably and sporadically.
Right. Invariably just means always. When the source noted that the guest was invariably welcome, it speaks to an unwavering, predictable constant. We need to identify which of our actions we perform invariably and ensure those actions are virtuous.
And the opposite.
Sporadically, meaning occasionally or at irregular intervals, like the exercise regimen. These two words highlight the difference between a consistent, deep habit and an activity that lacks the necessary repetition to become truly automatic, and thus lacks cognitive efficiency.
If you can use these terms to describe your own habits, you have already moved from simple awareness to deep psychological analysis.
Which is the foundational first step toward intentional, lasting change.
This has been a tremendously illuminating discussion. We've covered the cognitive efficiency that drives our routines, the pitfalls of doom scrolling and temporal optimism, and the practical, actionable strategy of using microhabits and habit stacking to build lasting momentum.
We've moved through the full cycle, really, analyzing the automation of the brain and providing the tools to intentionally override the paths that don't serve us.
Right.
We've seen how our brains prioritize efficiency, even when that efficiency leads to detrimental outcomes like financial drain or psychological stress.
And to ground this in a real-world commitment, we can refer back to the behavioral pact discussed in the sources, the challenge to implement a new routine.
Banning screens from the bedroom for a week.
Exactly. Aiming to swap that doom-scrolling habit for reading fiction to induce drowsiness. This simple challenge encapsulates the entire strategy.
It does. Identifying a detrimental habit and using a high-leverage micro-habit to forge a new neural pathway.
And that brings us back to the core insight, doesn't it?
It does. Since a habit is, by definition, a means of cognitive efficiency, the brain finding the easiest, most energy-saving way to operate, the goal is not, and should never be, to eliminate routine entirely. Routine is essential for a high-functioning life.
So what is the goal?
The goal is intentionality. The goal is to ensure that the things we do invariably on autopilot are virtuous rather than detrimental. If 40% of our waking day is spent on involuntary habits, we must consciously structure the starting actions so the brain automates the good outcome. If you are already operating on autopilot for large parts of your day, you have to ask yourself, is this automation serving my long-term goals, or is it merely conserving energy for procrastination?
That raises the final provocative thought for you, the listener, to mull over and to act upon. We've talked about habits that are financially draining, like chronic food delivery, and mentally draining, like morning doom scrolling.
Right.
So consider your day right now. Based on this principle of the instant gratification loop, which of your current involuntary actions, the ones you perform without thought, is the most financially or mentally draining?
And more importantly, based on the principle of lowering the barrier to entry, what is the single micro-habit you could use to curb that procrastination or expense immediately?
Not a huge overhaul.
No. Do not commit to cooking a week's worth of meals. Commit to buying one single healthy ingredient tonight. Do not commit to reading a novel. Commit to sitting on the bed with the book open for just 60 seconds. Start small. Stay consistent. And let that initial tiny conscious victory build the unstoppable momentum you need to myelinate that new virtuous path.
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the psychology of daily life. We look forward to the momentum you create.
Until next time, goodbye. Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we're going to try and dissect the psychology behind our everyday habits. I'm talking about those invisible architectures that quietly shape our lives.
Right, and we're going far beyond just, morning routines. We're diving into the murkier waters, the habits and vices we're maybe not so proud of.
Exactly, the ones we try to keep quiet. And to do that, you've argued we need to shift our language. We can't just call them bad habits.
We can't. It's too subjective. The more precise clinical term is maladaptive behaviors.
Maladaptive behaviors. Okay, break that down for us. What does that actually mean?
It means the pattern is not adequate for the situation. It might give you some kind of immediate relief, which is why we do it. But long term, it's actively working against your own goals.
So it reframes it completely. It's not a moral failing. It's more like an outdated coping mechanism.
Precisely. It's a failure to adjust, not a failure of character.
Okay, let's unpack that with a classic example, nail biting. So many people do it when they're grappling with, say, a complex problem or even just watching a suspenseful movie.
Yes, and that's the key, the internal pressure. That scenario creates what we call cognitive load.
The mental effort your brain is using.
Exactly. And when that load spikes, the nail biting kicks in. It's a classic somatic response to that anxiety.
Somatic. So that's a physical thing, relating to the body, separate from the mind.
That's it. It's a physical manifestation of mental stress. It actually functions as a kind of low-stakes, self-soothing mechanism.
So your brain is basically trying to help itself cope by offloading a tiny bit of that stress onto a simple physical action.
You got it. It's a mechanism, not just a fidget.
That makes perfect sense. My personal advice, though, is a bit more, expensive. I'm talking about constantly misplacing things. I think I bought half a dozen pairs of sunglasses last year alone.
Oh, that's a great example. And it actually connects right back to cognitive load, just in a different way.
How so? It feels more like just being careless.
Well, we'd call it an expensive eccentricity for sure. But it stems from absent-mindedness. When you put the sunglasses down, your brain is already preoccupied. It's thinking about the next task, your to-do list.
So I'm mentally already gone. I'm physically there, but my brain has moved on.
Exactly. The action of placing the object down never even registers as a memory-forming event. You're prioritizing your future thoughts over the present physical reality.
Wow. That's a costly form of mental preoccupation. Which leads me perfectly to my next point. The ridiculously expensive coffee habit.
Yes. The $5 latte when you have a perfectly good machine at home.
Right. So why do we do it? Is the experience economy just a fancy term for rationalizing impulse buys?
It can be, but there's more to it. When you buy that coffee, you're demonstrably not just paying for the liquid, you're paying for the ambiance, the ritual.
The brief social interaction with the barista.
All of it. That's the textbook definition of the experience economy. You're buying a feeling.
The feeling of being a productive person out in the world, away from my messy desk.
Precisely. The home machine gives you the caffeine, but the coffee shop delivers the feeling. It fills a psychological need that a kitchen appliance just can't.
That is a deep insight. It forces you to ask, what am I really buying here? Okay, let's shift gears. What happens when the structure of the work week just dissolves? Let's talk about the weekend.
Right, and that feeling of victory when you turn off the alarm on a Saturday morning.
It feels like you're reclaiming your time, but you're saying it's actually a problem.
It can be, because that radical shift in your wake-up time is a direct disruption of your circadian rhythm.
The body's internal clock, the sleep-wake cycle.
Yes, and that disruption, even just for 2 days, creates a phenomenon psychologists call social jet lag.
Social jet lag. I love that. So you're making Monday morning exponentially harder on yourself.
You are. You've maximized your leaker on Saturday, sure, but you've created a huge productivity deficit for Monday.
And then you have the other person, the one who is, cursed with an internal clock that wakes them up at 8 a.m. no matter what.
Right, and they try to reframe it as maximizing leisure time. But really, their biology is just demanding consistency. Which brings us to Sunday.
Yes, the Sunday cleaning ritual. The vacuuming, the laundry, scrubbing everything down. It feels so necessary before the week starts. Why is that?
It's all about emotional regulation through environmental control. It's a direct counterattack against the Sunday scaries.
That looming dread about the week ahead. The emails are piling up.
That's the one. And by restoring physical, visible order to your home, you gain a sense of competence and control. You can't control your inbox on a Sunday night, but you can control the dust bunnies.
So you mitigate anxiety, you make it less severe by taking control of what you can.
That's it, exactly. It's preventative maintenance for your mind.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move from these broader patterns into the really unique stuff. Let's talk about idiosyncrasies.
These are the strange, highly specific personal rules we all have. The unique quirks that don't always make logical sense, but feel incredibly important.
Like the example of invariably putting the left shoe on before the right. And if you don't, you get this feeling of unease.
Yes, a kind of internal friction. Because once that neural pathway is established, breaking it signals to your subconscious that something is wrong, even if your logical brain knows it's irrelevant.
You might even call it superstitious.
Many people do. It's a violation of a protective ritual, and that feels risky.
I have to admit my own literary compulsion here. I always read the last page of a novel before I start the first chapter.
And I bet people tell you that's sacrilege.
Every single time. They say I've spoiled the entire book.
But what's your justification for it?
For me, it's about managing expectations. If I know the destination, I can let go of the anxiety about the outcome and just enjoy the journey. I can focus on the quality of the writing.
That is a perfect example of what the idiom calls a method to the madness. What looks bizarre to an outsider is actually a highly functional system for you to mitigate your own reading anxiety.
A method to the madness. I like that. Okay, so we've identified and labeled all these behaviors. How do we actually change them? We need to move from analysis to action.
Right. And for that, we can use a very structured approach called habit stacking.
Habit stacking. Let's unpack that. What does it entail?
It's simple, really. It's the practice of anchoring a new habit you want to build onto an existing one that's already established.
So you're not starting from scratch. You're using the momentum of a routine you already have.
Precisely. The barrier to entry is so much lower because the decision of when to do the new habit is already made for you.
Give us the classic example.
Dental hygiene is the easiest one. The formula is, after I brush my teeth, your current habit, I will immediately floss, your new habit.
Makes the new habit feel inevitable.
It does. It leverages the momentum of that established neural pathway. But of course, the sources are clear that structure isn't enough. You also need accountability.
Right. A commitment like avoiding screens in bed only works if you, say, charge your phone across the room. You need a system.
A robust structure. Change is never just about good intentions.
A powerful note to end on. Before we wrap, let's do a quick review of the key vocabulary from today. I think these terms are so useful.
Let's do it. We started with the big one, maladaptive.
Right. A behavior that gives short-term relief but causes long-term harm because it's not appropriate for the situation.
And we had somatic.
Relating to the body, like nail biting being a somatic or physical response to mental pressure or high cognitive load.
And we can't forget the circadian rhythm.
That's your internal biological clock. Disrupt it with social jet lag on the weekend, and you pay the price on Monday.
And to deal with that Monday dread, we might mitigate our anxiety.
Meaning to make it less severe or painful, like with the Sunday cleaning ritual.
Finally, we covered our wonderful personal quirks with idiosyncrasy.
That's a mode of behavior unique to an individual. Your own personal rules, like putting the left shoe on first. Your personal method to the madness. Well, thank you for joining us for this deep dive. We hope that using these terms help you see your own behaviors not as flaws, but as complex, fascinating psychological systems.
And remember, Rome wasn't built in a day, and neither are good habits. Be patient with yourself. The goal isn't perfection, it's continuous learning. Until next time, stay curious about the patterns that run your life. Welcome back to the deep dive. For a few weeks now, we've been completely obsessed with habits.
We really have.
But we've been looking at them, through a microscope. We've been talking about the tiny personal loops.
The micro routine.
Exactly. The choice to drink water before coffee, the specific route you walk your dog. All the little things that shape your morning.
We were really focused on, let's say, the individual atom of a routine. But today, we're changing the magnification completely.
We are.
We are pulling way, way back to examine habits through what sociologists and cultural theorists would call a macroscopic lens.
That is the mission for today. We're zooming out from the individual to look at these massive, often invisible forces.
Right.
Things like culture, technology, economic pressures, all the things that dictate what we as a collective accept as, normal behavior.
Because a habit is never really formed in a vacuum, is it?
Not at all. It's a direct consequence of the era we live in and the societal rules that govern everything. Time, work, even something as simple as politeness.
So if you've ever wondered why your routine of, say, rigid punctuality causes you so much anxiety, or why a colleague in another country finds that same punctuality just utterly baffling, maybe even a little rude,
then this is absolutely the deep dive for you.
we're pulling together some really powerful insights today. We're drawing from sociology, behavioral economics, analysis of modern work culture, and even some cutting-edge predictions about artificial intelligence.
We're going to try and help you understand the invisible architecture that dictates your daily life.
Right.
We're not just defining these forces, we're analyzing their really profound implications for how our brains are actually changing.
Yeah.
So let's unpack this, and I think the perfect place to start is with the most fundamental human construct of all.
The clock.
The clock.
It's the perfect place to start. It really is. Because our perception of time is, it's the core ingredient of any routine.
Right.
And yet, it's the element that is most entirely defined by culture. To truly get why global habits around meetings, deadlines, social events, why they differ so radically, we have to first understand this sociological distinction.
Okay.
The one between what are called monochronic and polychronic cultures.
Okay, so monochronic and polychronic. I know our listeners are pretty well informed, so let's maybe move beyond just the simple definitions and get into the deep psychological and economic mechanics behind these two systems.
Excellent, yes. Let's start with monochronic cultures. These are the ones we often associate, historically at least, with industrialized Northern European nations.
So Germany, Switzerland, the United States, places like that.
Exactly. In these societies, time isn't abstract. It's treated almost like a physical thing, like a tangible inventory.
Tangible, meaning you can almost hold it.
You can. Time is linear.
Yeah.
It's substantial. It's quantifiable. You have slots of time. You have blocks in your calendar, and those blocks are rigid.
So time is a finite resource. It's like a budget, something that you can spend or save and this is the important part, something that can be wasted.
Precisely. And this sort of industrial view of time is directly linked to the rise of, mass production, factory shifts, modern contracts, anywhere that predictability is absolutely essential.
Right. The whole system depends on the trains running on time, literally.
Literally. And because time is seen as this valuable, measurable inventory, the routine of being on time punctuality, it becomes more than a preference. It becomes an absolute moral virtue.
A moral virtue, that's a strong way to put it.
It is. Schedules are rigid. You generally complete one task before you start the next. Any deviation from that, it breaks the whole chain of efficiency.
So if you're late for a meeting in, say, Zurich or New York, The offense isn't just that you're being inconvenient, it's almost an economic injury.
It is fundamentally viewed as a kind of resource theft. You are, in effect, telling the person who is waiting for you that you've just taken and wasted their allotted inventory of time without their permission.
Wow.
So in these routines, being prompt is deeply, deeply tied to efficiency, to financial success, and most importantly, to respect for the other person's highly scheduled life.
Which is why you see these habits built around such detailed planning. Meticulous calendars, strict adherence to deadlines.
The culture rewards the mental habit of rigid timekeeping. It has to, because the economy demands it.
And what's so fascinating to me is the psychological toll of this. I mean, the habit of monochronic thinking, it trains us for this intense sense of urgency.
It does.
We internalize the societal pressure that every second lost is somehow a failure of our character. That, that low-level anxiety you get about being 5 minutes late for anything.
Oh, absolutely.
That is a direct symptom of living inside a macroscopic monochronic system.
That anxiety is learned routine. It's conditioned. Now let's flip the script completely. Let's go to polychronic cultures.
Okay.
We find strong examples of this across parts of Latin America, the Mediterranean, the Middle East, some parts of Africa. And here, the perception of time is just. It's fundamentally different.
Also.
It's viewed as fluid, expansive, and it's seen as entirely subservient to whatever's happening in the immediate reality.
So in this system, the most important priority isn't the clock on the wall.
Not at all.
It's the human interaction, the relationship, the conversation that is happening right now.
Exactly right. Relationships and maintaining those ongoing social and professional connections, they take this overwhelming precedence over any kind of rigid schedule.
So if a conversation is important, if you're strengthening a personal connection,
The clock just stops mattering. The routine, the commitment, is to the human quality of that moment, not to some arbitrary slot in a calendar.
I remember reading this great anecdote about I think it was a German engineer who was trying to set up a supply chain in a very polychronic country. And he was just getting deeply frustrated because every single meeting started, 45 minutes late. But his frustration was completely invisible to his partners.
Because in their view, nothing was wrong.
Exactly. In their view, the previous interaction they were having, maybe a spontaneous chat with a government official, that had yielded far greater long-term relationship value than just, adhering to a clock.
That is the absolute core conflict. In that context, being 20 minutes late is not a sign of a bad habit of disrespect.
No.
It's a sign of good habit. The habit of prioritizing relationship maintenance over a kind of mechanical efficiency.
So the stress is reversed.
It's completely reversed.
Yeah.
When you operate in a polychronic system, the stress doesn't come from being late. The stress comes from having to abruptly end a really fruitful, important conversation just because your Google Calendar sends you a notification.
This macroscopic view just shows us that even the simplest daily habit, showing up on time, is this incredibly complex, socially agreed upon idea.
It's a construct. It's a definition of efficiency, really. M time, or monochronic time, defines efficiency as speed and mechanical precision.
And P time.
P time defines efficiency as social harmony and relational depth. Two completely different goals.
And that framework is so critical when you're managing global teams or routines. You can't just enforce the habit of punctuality without addressing that underlying cultural value of what time is.
You'd be doomed to fail. If you impose a strict monochronic routine on a polychronic culture, you won't get more efficiency. You will most likely just decrease morale and destroy trust.
Because you're violating a core, deep-seated cultural routine of relationship building.
You're speaking a different language of time.
Okay, that foundational structure of time, it really dictates almost everything else, including how we feed ourselves. So let's move from time itself to what we do with that time, specifically meal rituals. This is where that M-time pressure starts to manifest in a very visible way.
Dining is one of the clearest sociological barometers we have for a culture's priorities. It really is.
A barometer, I like that.
When you compare different cultural habits around meals, you get this tangible look at what a society truly values. Is it the speed of production, or is it the quality of life?
So let's start with an example of what we might call a sacrosanct ritual. A routine that is so culturally protected, it can't be interfered with.
And the classic example in all the research is the midday meal in countries like France or Italy or Spain.
The long lunch.
The long lunch, yes. In France, the midday meal is often viewed as this sacred, protected time. Historically, and in many cases legally, it's a minimum of 1 hour, but often it's 2 hours.
And the purpose of this routine is not just about getting calories in.
Oh, not at all. It's a moment for community, for savoring a gastronomic experience, and crucially, for deliberately stepping away from the demands of productive labor.
So the routine is actually built around appreciation and reflection and social connection. It's a collective pause that's literally built into the daily fabric of the society.
Right. And that word you used, sacrosanct, it means too important to be violated. The habit of the communal lunch is, for the most part, culturally non-negotiable.
And that non-negotiation part is the key insight, isn't it?
It is. The culture has collectively agreed that the value of this reflective social routine actually outweighs the potential economic loss of 2 hours of productivity.
It's a routine that protects mental health and social cohesion.
Exactly. Now, let's contrast that with the habits that are so prevalent in these hyper-competitive, time-conscious, monochronic urban centers.
The centers of what we now call hustle culture.
Yes. Think of the financial districts in New York, or tech hubs in Seattle, or media centers in London.
We're entering a completely different world now.
We're at the complete opposite end of the spectrum. We are now in the realm of the normalized phenomenon of al desco dining.
Ah, yes, eating at your desk. The ubiquitous habit of eating a sandwich or a salad or some leftovers right at your workstation.
Often with one hand still on the mouse or while you're still half listening to a muted conference call.
The moment you see that routine, you recognize this complete shift in what society is prioritizing. The meal itself shifts from being a cultural event to being a purely mechanical function.
It shifts from a ritualistic, social, and contemplative experience to a purely utilitarian one.
Utilitarian. Explain that in this context.
In this context, food stops being a gastronomic joy, a source of pleasure, and it simply becomes the essential fuel required for immediate survival and continued high-speed productivity.
It's a pit stop.
It is a pit stop, measured in minutes, and its only design is to maintain the machine's efficiency so it can get back to work.
But this shift in the dining routine, it's not really just about how we consume food, is it? It feels like a profound symptom of a broader and maybe more dangerous societal habit.
It absolutely is. The glorification of busyness.
The glorification of busyness.
This utilitarian approach to eating is linked directly to a macroscopic habit where we, as societies, have developed this pattern of equating exhaustion and chronic overwork with high status.
So the more stressed and time-poor you are, the more important you must be.
That's the logic. The economic pressure from the monochronic system creates this constant feeling of time scarcity, and that scarcity is then worn like a badge of honor.
So the habit is to perpetually signal your own importance by signaling your lack of availability.
Precisely.
If you take a full hour for lunch, it almost suggests you aren't crucial enough to be needed by someone.
Right. But if you eat al desco and you're firing off emails at 11 p.m., it signals that you are indispensable. We see people everywhere wearing burnout like a badge of honor.
And it's a self-reinforcing and ultimately destructive collective routine.
It is. Sociologically, the culture creates a system where the habit of pausing for a meal, for rest, for reflection, for family, is subtly or sometimes very overtly penalized.
While the habit of continuous high-intensity motion,
often to the point of clinical burnout,
is rewarded with prestige and promotions and financial status.
And what's crucial to understand here is that this scarcity of time is often manufactured or at least exaggerated by the systems themselves. Well, think about longer commutes from urban sprawl. The expectation of being available around the clock because of technology. All of these things conspire to make that utilitarian, fuel-based meal routine feel like the only logistically feasible option.
Which brings us smoothly into the enormous impact of modern technology, the way it's rewiring our collective habits, particularly by eroding the boundaries that fuel that need for speed.
Yes. The key term here has to be hyperconnectivity.
Right. Before smartphones, before constant mobile access, there was a natural physical boundary between work and life.
You left the office. You literally could not be reached until the next day unless it was a true emergency. You had to wait for the fax machine or check the answering machine.
And now that boundary has just completely eroded. It's become the new normal.
The erosion is the new routine. The research points out that the routine of checking your emails at 9 p.m. went from being this extraordinary emergency measure.
Something you'd only do if the building was on fire.
Exactly, a real crisis. And it transitioned into a standard expected habit. It's the always-on mentality that technology has not just enabled, but in many professions, it has required.
And this always-on habit, it doesn't just mess with our sleep or our family time. It fundamentally changes the nature of our attention.
It has to.
We are conditioning ourselves on a massive macroscopic level to exist in this state of fragmented attention. We expect and respond to interruptions at any moment, this constant low-level cognitive load. It's just exhausting.
And that hyperconnectivity leads directly to the next widespread collective habit, one that psychologists are studying very intensely right now.
Which is?
Cognitive offloading.
Okay, I want to spend some real time here, because this feels like where the macroscopic shift moves from just a behavioral routine to maybe actual structural changes in our cognitive habits.
I think so.
So define cognitive offloading for us again, but let's really get into the mechanisms at play.
Okay. Cognitive offloading is our reliance on external technology. So our smartphones, smart assistants, cloud storage, GPS to perform mental tasks for us.
Outsourcing our brain's work.
It's outsourcing. The mechanism is really simple. The brain is an incredibly energy-intensive organ. It's always looking for a shortcut. So if a tool exists that can handle a mental task with less energy expenditure,
the brain naturally outsources the work.
It does. To reduce its own information processing requirements, it's an efficiency move.
So we're essentially using our technology as a kind of secondary external memory system, an external hard drive, and a navigational tool.
Exactly. Let's look at some specific habits we've basically lost in just the last 20 years.
Okay.
The most obvious one is the functionally extinct habit of memorizing phone numbers. That relies on rote semantic memory.
Gone. Completely gone. I know maybe 4 phone numbers by heart.
And that's probably more than average now. But consider a more complex habit. Spatial navigation.
Getting from A to B.
Right. 20 years ago, if you wanted to go across town to a place you'd never been, you would have to generate an internal map. You'd look at a paper map first, maybe.
Then you'd rely on spatial reasoning, visual landmarks, turn left at the big church, and your hippocampus would create this mental model of the city.
That's a lot of complex cognitive work.
And now
we just follow a blue dot on a screen.
It's so true.
When you follow a GPS, you are engaging in a very low-level procedural memory. Just follow the instruction. But you are not constructing that complex spatial mental map. We are outsourcing the active construction and manipulation of spatial memory.
So if we're outsourcing the labor of both rote memory, like phone numbers, and complex spatial reasoning, like navigation, the core question we have to ask is, what are the consequences?
That's a huge question.
Are we sacrificing fundamental cognitive skills just for the sake of convenience? Are we collectively breaking the habit of remembering and processing information internally?
Well, this is the center of a very big debate. If we think of memory and spatial awareness as mental muscles, then the concern is valid. The risk is cognitive atrophy.
Atrophy, like a muscle wasting away.
Exactly. When we use that term, we're using it metaphorically to describe the decline or wasting away of specific mental skills simply from disuse.
That sounds pretty alarming. If the brain is being optimized for energy saving, by offloading these tasks, what are the specific cognitive consequences of this so-called atrophy?
The concern is kind of twofold. First, there's the loss of what you might call high-stakes recall practice. If you never have to exercise the retrieval of complex facts or directions under pressure, that retrieval process itself can become slower and less efficient.
The muscle gets weak.
The muscle gets weak. And second, and this is perhaps more critical, is the potential degradation of our working memory and our attention span.
How does that connect?
The constantly fragmented attention required by hyperconnectivity, combined with the fact that we don't need to do as much deep internal processing, means the working memory system struggles. It's not getting the exercise it needs to hold and manipulate multiple pieces of information at the same time.
And this is where the debate gets really dynamic. The convenience is just undeniable. And there is a very powerful counter-argument that challenges this whole idea of atrophy.
Yes, the optimistic view. And we have to give it its due.
Absolutely.
The counter-argument basically posits that this offloading isn't atrophy at all, it's freedom. It's a massive evolutionary gain.
Freedom from what?
Freedom from mental clutter. The human brain's executive function is a limited resource. So if we outsource the mundane, low-value data, the phone numbers, the simple driving directions, the scheduling logistics, we free up that valuable finite brain power for much higher-order tasks.
Instead of cluttering our mental RAM with, the specific details of street names or dinner reservations.
We can focus that same capacity on abstract thought, on synthesizing complex ideas, creative problem solving, or, and this is critical, on metacognition.
The habit of thinking about how we think.
That's the crux of it. Our brain's energy is being reallocated. Instead of spending cognitive effort remembering where we're going, we can spend it optimizing why we're going there, or developing a strategy for the meeting when we arrive.
We're shifting from being human hard drives to being human processors of abstract meaning.
That's the optimistic take.
This also challenges our historical habits of learning, doesn't it? For centuries, education routines were so heavily based on rote memorization. Poems, dates, multiplication tables.
Things that a calculator and a search engine now do flawlessly.
So if we're moving into an era where that function is fully and instantaneously outsourced, we have to radically rethink the necessary habits of a functional citizen. We need habits of critical analysis and contextualization, not just retrieval.
And that is the key challenge for any learner today. Is this a good trade? Are the lost habits like rote memorization, fundamental skills you need to maintain for brain health, for neuroplasticity, or are they just clutter that we're much better off outsourcing?
It's a massive societal routine restructuring, all dictated by technological capability, and we are living right in the middle of it. The effects are still unfolding.
It is a fascinating bridge.
Yeah.
Because we're moving from a passive offloading system, using Google as a quick reference, to an increasingly proactive and even prescriptive system guided by advanced AI.
Okay, let's pivot there to the immediate future, artificial intelligence. How is AI poised to shape our interaction habits and our personal routines in, say, the next decade?
Well, AI is unique. It isn't just a tool like a map or a calculator. It's an entity that we are beginning to interact with almost as if it were a personalized, hyper-efficient colleague.
And that's going to fundamentally change our deep-seated routines, not just for information, but for social interaction and self-regulation.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the source material highlights a cognitive shift that's already underway that really demonstrates this blurring of the lines.
What's that?
It's the routine of humanizing algorithms.
Humanizing algorithm.
We're already starting to hear people routinely saying please and thank you to their smart speakers, to their digital assistants.
I do that. I absolutely do that.
So many people do. And rationally, we know these are non-sentient machines. They do not require politeness to function. Yet we offer it anyway.
So why do we do it? Is it just residual social programming? Is the habit of politeness so ingrained that we just apply it to everything indiscriminately? Or is there something more complex, maybe anticipatory going on?
The research suggests it's more the latter. There's an anticipatory routine at play. People often express a sort of preemptive psychological defense.
What do they say?
Things like, I know the machine doesn't care, but I'm doing this for my own social muscle memory. Or, and this is the interesting one, I'm doing it just in case these algorithms become sentient later.
Hedging our bets against the robot uprising.
In a way, yes. It's an exercise in social conditioning. We are training ourselves to be polite to the algorithm, which is an entirely new collective habit, and it's redefining the boundaries of what or who deserves respect.
That sets the stage perfectly for AI's potential next role as a routine shaper, what the source calls the digital guardian.
Yes. This is AI moving beyond passive assistance, what's on my calendar, into proactive routine optimization.
Okay.
This is where the power of predictive analysis really comes into play. The digital guardian moves past simply reminding you of what you decided to do. It anticipates your needs and it interrupts your trajectory toward failure.
It's an externalized, hyper-optimized self-control mechanism.
That's a great way to put it.
Give us a specific, detailed example. How might this digital guardian actually intervene in a daily routine based on predictive data?
Okay, so we're moving into the realm of real-time analysis of physiological markers, time series data. Imagine you're wearing a device, a watch or a ring, that monitors not just simple metrics like your heart rate, but also complex indicators like your heart rate variability or HRV.
Which is a key measure of stress.
A Q measure.
Yeah.
But also micro fluctuations in your skin conductance, which measures arousal. It could even analyze your vocal prosody, your tone and pitch during phone calls, and even subtle shifts in your typing rhythm and how many errors you're making.
That is an immense amount of data being fed into an AI about my internal state, a state I might not even be aware of myself.
Exactly. An AI analyzing this constant real-time stream of data might detect a stress signature.
A pattern.
A physiological precursor to an anxiety spike or a major drop in focus, maybe 5 or 10 minutes before you, the user, consciously recognize that you're becoming overwhelmed.
So the AI, the digital guardian, it wouldn't wait for me to reach that tipping point where I habitually reach for my phone to doom scroll or grab another cup of coffee to cope.
It intervenes immediately, proactively. It prompts you. Maybe it's a quiet vibration on your wrist, a subtle shift in your screen's color temperature, or a quiet audio alert. And it prompts you to engage in a preventative routine.
Like what?
Maybe it suggests a 5-minute focused breathing exercise, or a mandated stand-up and stretch break. It might even automatically defer all your non-urgent notifications for the next 10 minutes without you asking.
So the AI is breaking my established bad habit of letting stress escalate by installing a new, optimized routine before my conscious mind even recognizes the need for it.
That is the goal.
That is the ultimate double-edged sword.
It really is.
On one hand, the utility is just phenomenal. I mean, imagine having a personal system that prevents you from burning out before it even starts.
A potential upside is massive.
But on the other hand, the sheer level of physiological surveillance and behavioral intervention is deeply, deeply intrusive.
It's a profound trade-off. It's intrusive because this technology is monitoring and intervening in emotional and attentional states that have historically been entirely private and self-managed.
Right.
Yet, it is incredibly useful because it could optimize these core vital routines, stress management, focus, sleep hygiene, at the precise moment of need, potentially preventing massive health and productivity failures down the line.
So the macroscopic habit that's forming here is that we as a society are slowly accepting a loss of our emotional privacy in exchange for guaranteed routine optimization.
That seems to be the direction we're headed.
And beyond just optimizing our existing habits, AI is also driving entirely new collective routines, isn't it? Particularly around things like learning and financial management.
Oh, absolutely. The very habit of acquiring knowledge is being restructured.
How so?
Well, historically, the routine of learning involved, gathering information, often in a very linear way.
Yeah.
You read a textbook chapter by chapter, you listen to a lecture from beginning to end, and then you try to synthesize it all in your head. Now, AI platforms are introducing the habit of curation and synthesis optimization. The AI doesn't just give you a list of search results. It learns your specific cognitive blind spots and your learning style preferences. And it presents information that is curated and synthesized specifically for your optimal absorption.
So if I'm a visual learner, if I habitually struggle with big blocks of text, the AI would change my learning routine to prioritize infographics and video summaries.
Precisely. The habit shifts from laboriously searching for facts to learning how to prompt, filter, and critically evaluate the AI's curated synthesis.
So the routine is no longer about finding the needle in the haystack.
It's about making sure the needle the AI hands you isn't just a shiny piece of junk. It's a shift towards critical evaluation.
And what about our financial routines? That's an area that is usually governed by human emotion and, let's be honest, often very poor habits.
That routine is being completely automated. We are, as a collective, developing the habit of outsourcing our financial responsibility and discipline.
To the machine.
To the machine. AI now manages automated saving algorithms. It can dynamically adjust investment portfolios based on real-time market shifts and a personalized risk assessment. And what this does is it breaks the habit of reactive, emotional, financial decision-making.
Which is often disastrous.
So often.
Yeah.
Instead of that habitual, panicked urge to sell everything during a market dip,
Right.
the AI enforces the rational routine of long-term planning. It just removes human emotional failure from the equation.
So the digital guardian manages our money habits better than we can. It reinforces positive long-term routines by eliminating the opportunity for us to make short-term negative emotional reactions.
That's the promise, yes. So you see, regardless of whether the influence is culture or technology or advanced AI, the core function of a habit remains the same.
It's a tool.
It's a tool for navigating life efficiently, whether that efficiency is defined as social, mechanical, or now predictive.
We've covered a remarkable amount of ground today. We've gone from the sociology of time perception all the way to the future of machine interaction.
We have.
So to consolidate all this knowledge for you, the learner, we really need to pause and make sure these advanced concepts we've used become second nature in your critical vocabulary.
Because these terms aren't just definitions to memorize. They're frameworks for seeing the world differently.
Exactly. So we began this entire deep dive by setting the scale, by defining our approach as macroscopic.
Macroscopic, right. We use that to describe looking at the big picture, all the societal, cultural, and technological forces that influence group behavior, as opposed to the microscopic individual habit loops we discussed before.
Then when we were talking about monochronic cultures, we needed a powerful word to capture their relationship with time, and we used tangible.
Tangible meaning real and substantial. We used it to describe how cultures like Germany or Switzerland treat time as this quantifiable, scarce commodity and inventory you can hold.
And being late literally means wasting a piece of that tangible resource.
We contrasted that cultural priority with the dining habits in France, where the midday meal is protected, it can't be disturbed. We described it as a sacrosanct ritual.
The sacrosanct. Regarded as too important or valuable to be interfered with. It defines a routine that a culture has decided is fundamentally non-negotiable, setting it apart from the demanding, productive schedule.
And the opposite of that sacrosanct meal was the hustle culture approach to food, which we defined as utilitarian.
Utilitarian, designed to be useful or practical rather than attractive or enjoyable. In the context of al desco dining, it means that the routine of eating is reduced purely to the process of acquiring the necessary fuel for continuous productivity.
Then moving into technology, the core process driving the shift in our mental routines was cognitive offloading.
Cognitive offloading, yes. This is the process of using external actions or devices, like your smartphone's GPS, to actively reduce the information processing requirements that your brain has to handle internally.
It's the outsourcing of mental labor, and it affects everything from memory to spatial awareness.
And finally, we discussed the risk that comes with all this outsourcing, using the metaphorical concept of atrophy.
Atrophy, which typically means the wasting away of a muscle from lack of use. Metaphorically, we used it to describe the potential decline or weakening of specific internal mental skills, like rote memorization or internal map construction or sustained attention, if we always rely on technology to do those tasks for us.
Understanding these concepts really allows you to contextualize your own daily behavior, to recognize that your routines aren't just arbitrary personal quirks.
No, they are consequences of huge, unseen cultural and technological forces that are shaping our entire global environment.
This deep dive has shown us just how far we've moved from seeing habits as purely personal psychology. We've seen how culture dictates the economic and emotional value of time itself. How modern economics can shift meal routines from being rituals to being mere fuel stops.
And how technology is fundamentally restructuring our relationship with our own memory and, very soon, with our management of emotion.
The forces dictating these macroscopic shifts they're massive, and they can often feel overwhelming. But the final, daily choice, that still rests with the individual.
It does. You are still the ultimate architect of your own life and your chosen routines. Even within the pressure of hustle culture or the intrusion of the digital guardian, you are the one who chooses what you offload, what you prioritize, and which cultural values you want to align with.
So as you move through your day, think about these macroscopic forces. We've presented a really clear contrast today between two fundamental cultural frameworks.
The monochronic and the polychronic view of time.
And your daily decisions, whether you rush or you linger, whether you prioritize the schedule or the person, are reflections of these two systems colliding inside you.
And this is the provocative thought we want to leave you with. Now that you understand these fundamental cultural frameworks, which culture's core habits do you most admire? Which do you wish you could integrate more into your own life?
Do you prioritize the monochronic efficiency of the Swiss, where that rigidity and punctuality ensure maximum resource utilization and maybe reduce anxiety around uncertainty?
Or do you find yourself leaning toward the polychronic warmth of the Mediterranean, where flexibility and relationship maintenance are the non-negotiable routines, ensuring a deeper connection to the present moment, to the people right in front of you?
Your answer to that really determines your personal philosophy of time.
And that philosophy will dictate the daily routines you choose to build and maintain, regardless of the technological tide.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the macroscopic view of routine. Keep analyzing, keep learning, and keep asking those big questions.
Until next time, goodbye.